Thanks to Baron of Dice, Grey Matter Gaming, and Monument Hobbies for sponsoring this video. Hi, I'm Campbell McLaughlin, world's least problematic Black Templar player, and I'm here with Goonhammer's hot take on the October 2024 balance data slate. Join us as we find out who are the winners, who are the losers, and who is just happy to be included. As usual, you can find written, moderately less manic companion write-ups on Goonhammer.com. Link in the down there bit. Before we get going, this isn't gonna be a big ol' rage fest. Come on, that's gauche. Even if our pet factions got some price hikes or nerfs, nobody's frothing at the mouth over here. If we were, we'd probably have a thumbnail like this, and a title like, Games Workshop literally shot my dog and forced me to watch. No, this is measured, respectable, the kind of Warhammer coverage you can bring home to meet your folks. We're gonna go faction by faction, and break down any major points adjustments, overall rule changes, and how they'll affect your games of Warhammer 40,000 going forward. We'll be hitting the high notes, so don't consider this comprehensive. So what's in this update? While Games Workshop has been releasing balance updates for Warhammer 40,000 on a more or less quarterly basis, those updates aren't all the same. In particular, this update gave us a game-wide points update, with updates to various faction FAQ and errata documents, and an update to the core rules, commentary, and the Pariah Nexus tournament companion. There wasn't actually a data slate update in this update, so the bulk of rule changes are either small adjustments or clarifications, while faction balance has been addressed almost entirely through points changes. Here are the winners that we think came out ahead in the balance data slate, either because of points drops, rules clarifications, or other chicanery that we think lifts them up. Orcs were one of the two big winners this time around, and they needed it the most. They haven't seen a proper event win since Pariah Nexus dropped, and the help they got shows it. The big drops here are Mega Knobs, which came down 5 points per model, Kill Rigs, which came down 25, Boys, and Beast Snagas. A number of vehicles also came down in cost, but it's up in the air whether that's gonna matter. Some of the better Orc armies out there gained a full additional unit to work with, which can be a big help. It was arguable how much help Genestealer cults needed. They'd been sporting one of the game's lowest win rates, but their tricky playstyle lent itself well to skilled play at top levels. This update saw points drops across a large number of units, with Aberrants going down 15 points for 5 models, Patriarchs going down 10, and Acolytes and Neophytes going down as well. The net result here is that most Genestealer cult armies gained an additional unit, and in an army that focuses on threat saturation and regenerating units, that's pretty good. Chaos Knights saw big drops for big boys. 15 points each for Desecrators and Despoilers, and 20 for the Abominant, but the big story here is Brigands, Huntsmen, and Stalker War Dogs going down 5 points each. This opens them back up for armies running 13 War Dogs, and also gives them an extra allied unit to play with. It's also great news for other Chaos factions who would typically run allied Brigands. Death Guard got 10-point drops on Death Shroud Terminators and the Biologist Putrefier, and Mortarion got a hefty 25-point discount too. Combine this with the drop to Brigands, it could make for one extra allied unit or character to play with. On the downside, Typhus's Eater Plague can't ignore Lone Operative anymore, closing a loophole that was mostly funny because it was clear Games Workshop just forgot about Typhus when they originally changed Doombolt. Points drops to 5-man units of Grey Knight Terminators, Paladins, and Purgation Squads. Sure, why not? Grey Knights have been hanging around in the pretty good zone for a while, and may jump up a tier as changes to the top armies bring those down a peg. The Eldari appear to have paid for their sins early in the edition, never forget, and received points drops this time around. A bunch of units went down, including Falcons, Fire Prisms, and Wave Serpents, while a small drop to the Wraith Knight now puts it under the 500-point threshold so it can fit into strategic reserves. It's not a ton on the whole, but it does free up a few points. The Incarn's inevitable death rule was nerfed a bit, in that it now requires you to move the Incarn to the exact spot the dead model was, centering your base over the dead model's base instead of just touching it. This gives you a bit less freedom when you're doing the whole death teleport thing. Points drops on Imperial Knight Castellans, Valiants, Errants, and Gallants, with just a 15-point increase on the ever-present Canis Rex to compensate. Anything that can get people to actually play with the big stompy robots instead of dinky little armigers is a win in our book. The Tau saw some small increases on Riptides and Piranhas, but small drops on Kroot and Commander Farsight. They also updated the Puretide Engram chip to actually do something, giving you CP back on a 4-up when you target its unit with a stratagem. These changes don't amount to much of a nerf, and players will be able to roll with the Riptide increase while enjoying the top of the meta being pulled down to their level. A pair of drops for demons put them in the winner category, Shalaxi Hellbane going down 25 points and Beast of Nurgle going down 5. Despite Renmasters going up 15, ultimately demons win by staying put while everyone ahead of them moves down. Not winners, not losers, but a mysterious third thing. These are the factions that either got a light touch or a mix of buffs and nerfs that left them somewhere in the middle. Space Marines are a bit weird because some of these changes might seem bad. Points increases on the Apothecary Biologist and Eradicator combo will hurt some armies, the 10-point increase on Assault Intercessors with jump packs is rough, and the Fire Discipline enhancement is a genie they've been trying to cram back in the bottle all edition. But let me let you in on a little secret. Space Marines have a lot of stuff. Like, a lot of stuff. In a codex this packed, a couple units getting a price increase is far from a deal breaker. Storm Speeders all saw huge points drops, the Ballistus Dreadnought, Heavy Intercessors, Invictor Warsuits, and Invader ATVs are all cheap as hell, Terminators of both flavors got big price cuts, Suppressors are cheaper in points than they are in dollars. Reavers? Reavers are really cheap now! You're still not gonna take them, but you could! Gilliman and Phobos Captains even got a cut. There's so much to work with. Whether you're playing Vanilla Marines or any of the more interesting flavors that are out there, new options have almost certainly opened up for you. The FAQs in errata were even good to Marine players for the most part, with the Captain's Rights of Battle rule applying unambiguously to units and reserves, lieutenants of all flavors got some words fixed around what units they can join, and there was a clarification that Hellblasters only get to shoot on death when they're killed by an attack, or assumedly their own guns overheating. Desolation Squads also lost their bonus to hit for standing still while firing in direct, which, sure, the body's already cold, so who cares if you give it a swift boot. Lastly, Uriel's Square-Toes Ventress now has a 12-inch CP tax aura, and if you're aggressive with him, that can be hugely frustrating for your opponent, especially if his buddies from the company heroes are tagging along. Overall, the sheer scope of the army insulates it from a few points changes, and it should be in a pretty decent place. Similar to Demons, Votann only saw small tweaks, and that's a good thing for a faction which stood to gain plenty from its opponents dropping in power level. Jaegers went up a bit, but not nearly enough to stop you from jamming them into lists, you Jägermeister you. Bulgrin took a 20-point increase, and as these are staples in Astra Militarum lists, we're now looking at the very real possibility of needing to include allied Grey Knight Terminators instead to serve that close combat counterpunch role. Tank Commanders also took a 20-point hit, but gained the Squadron rule in exchange, which means they can now issue orders to themselves and other tank squadrons, which might be worth that bump. There's some small drops to Ogren, Scout Sentinels, Field Ordnance Batteries, and Heavy Weapon Squads, but probably not enough to impact most lists. They closed some loopholes to keep officers from gaining bonus orders from rules jank, and battle-shocked units can't benefit from orders anymore now either. This isn't the hardest hit in the world, but Guard armies will likely be looking a bit different coming out of this. The change on the whole is neither negative nor neutral, but with the nerfs to the game's top armies, we expect Guard to move comfortably into the upper tier of play. Chaos Space Marines had a big nerf to Accursed Cultists, who went up in cost along with the Dark Commune and lost their ability to surge multiple times per turn, but gained some buffs to a number of other units. The most notable of these are points drops on Abaddon, Obliterators, Terminators, and Havocs. There have been some good veterans of the Long War list lately that run Obliterators, and you can expect to see Abaddon start showing up in more lists too. However, we suspect that the 15 minutes are up for the Chaos Cult detachment. That's right, we're free from Cultist Jail. On the rule changes side, Vashtor saw a points drop and can now use 3 of the stratagems in his detachment. This changes next to nothing, but it does make him less of a hilarious chore to play. Necron saw major point hikes on the Monolith and Tesseract Vault, but had drops in the Doomsday Ark, Annihilation Barge, Catacomb Command Barge, and Triarch Praetorians, among other things. This means that some lists won't have trouble working around the new changes, and Hypercrypt Legion lists are sure to remain a threat in the meta. On the rules side, the biggest change is the Silent King now finally has the Triarch keyword, and can benefit from the Obeisance Phalanx detachment rule. Tyranid sees some small changes, points scuttling around various units. Carnifexes, Winged Hive Tyrants, and Von Ryan's Leapers came down, while Pyrovores, Old One-Eye, and Lictors went up. Nids make out okay in this update by standing still, mostly. These are armies that aren't strictly bad now, but definitely got the short end of the slate. Just cause your army's a loser doesn't mean you are. I love you. One of the top 4 factions coming into this update, Drukhari were hit with a series of major point increases to their melee threats, including Archons, Beastmasters, Courts of the Archon, Drazar, Incubi, Lelith Hesperax, and Mandrakes. These are some big hikes, and they likely pull the pure melee version of this army out of competitive play, but there are still plenty of things you can do without leaning on character and incubi heavy builds. It pains me to say this, but Dorn's third favorite kids got a kick in the teeth this slate. Mainstays of Templar lists like High Marshal Helbrecht, Chaplain Grimaldus, and Primaris Crusader squads all got 10-point points hikes, with reinforced squads of Crusaders taking a 30-point increase. Even the nearly extinct Short King Crusader squads took a hit, with their reinforced squads going up 20 points. The 5-point price drop to Castellans and Marshals, the Templar variants of lieutenants and captains with fewer war gear options, is a pretty meager salve here, but might help fit them into some lists. The only rules clarification was around their Fervent Acclamation stratagem. This lets that unit be under the effect of a second vow, and now that second vow applies to any special rules or equipment that unit has. Some people already played this way, but it's in writing now. The Lupine criminal justice system was thoroughly disrespected this go-around, with significant points hikes to Bjorn the Fell-Handed, Logan Grimnar, and Thunderwolf Cavalry. The standardization of surge moves also hurts the faction, as each unit can only do it once per phase and not while battle-shocked. Similar to Black Templars, the Warrior Pride stratagem, which lets a unit benefit from a saga they haven't yet completed, now lets you use the enhanced version of each stratagem. That's deep in the wolfy weeds, but they did throw a bone to Champions of Rust with that one. Also, Power Armored Wolfguard, Skyclaws, and Longfangs all got points drops, so at least your 5th edition Space Wolves army will be ready for wolf time. Sisters have been burning down the house lately, regularly making the top 4 at big events like the Nova Open and personally taking my lunch money on several occasions. They were due for a hit, and they got one, with the Triumph of St. Catherine going up a whopping 60 points, 10-point increases on Castigators, Immolators, Dominions, Paragon Warsuits, Morven Val, and the Dialogus. Seraphim also got a hit, taking a 5-point bump on small squads and a pretty rough 20-point hit on bigger ones. The full gamut of the Bringers of the Flame enhancements all took increases, with the only points drops anywhere being on Bog Standard Battle Sisters and Zephyrim, who I was not convinced were actually real. When you split up a squad to put it into an Immolator, you have to choose which half gets to take the Cherub now too. Will all this be enough to stop Sisters from dominating the board? I hope so. Will it be enough to stop them from cyberbullying me in real life? Probably not. The game's best army coming into this update were bound to get pulled back to Earth. Thousand Sons armies saw points hits of 10 to 20 points to nearly every unit that was seeing play, save for Terminators, Cultists, and some of the vehicles. The net result is that most competitive lists went up in cost by anywhere between 100 to 160 points. Is that enough to kill the faction? Probably not. The army's damage output is just too good, and even removing a unit, you're still gonna make do. Particularly as Sisters, Drukhari, and Space Wolves take a hit. But it does make the Thousand Sons merely extremely good, and not indisputably top tier. These Golden Girls got some price cuts to Trajan Valoris, Contemptor Dreadnoughts of all flavors, and Virtus Praetors, but none are really enough to let you do much else with the army. What's a Custodes player really gonna do with an extra 25 points? Be 25 points under, that's what. Assemblage of Might also doesn't work on a unit in a transport, and stops working if the bearer somehow gets sniped out of a squad. Even if the Banana Guards got some points drops, it's not enough to really feel substantial. Moody, broody, and bound by duty, Dark Angels got a bit of a seesaw this go around. The competitive mainstays of Azrael and the entirely too durable Deathwing Knights got hit, and if you took a typical list with Azzy and 3 bricks of 5 Knights, you're faced with a 60-point upcharge. However, the Ravenwing side of the army got drops across the board, with Samuel, Ravenwing Command Squads, and the Landspeeder Vengeance all getting pretty hefty points cuts. Even the big man himself, Lion, the Johnson, L. Johnson, got a 15-point drop, and this is all starting to look a bit interesting. This is still probably a net negative for Dark Angels though. Their most played units were those Knights and Azrael, and those were definitely a bit too good. They'll still find the points somewhere after the increase, but it's still not a good result for them. The World Eater's 8 points hikes on Angron, the Master of Executions, and Chaos Spawn, while seeing a small drop on Winged Demon Princes. For a faction that only has a dozen datasheets to work with and frequently fields competitive armies which run 1970 points, these hurt, and it's not a good pain. The Imperial Island of Misfit Toys took a 15-point increase to Subductor squads, and some rules clarification that you can't make a Rhino turducken with other vehicles. Maybe they're just saving the heat for the Deathwatch Index. These factions are just vibing, man. Maybe they got better, maybe they got worse. I don't know. It's hard to tell how these will shake out, so we're just gonna say they're happy to be here. In a lot of ways, Blood Angels are so new to the edition that we can't offer that much insight. The only points they've had were the ones in their codex, and printed points are so vestigial in 2024 that Age of Sigmar doesn't even bother with them anymore. Death Company captains with or without jump packs, Death Company dreadnoughts, Death Company Marines on foot, and Sanguinary Guard all came in under those printed points values, with Ball Predators, Death Company Marines with jump packs, Lamartis, and the humble Blood Angels captain on foot all taking increases. Like half the enhancements went up or down, a bunch of warrior selections got clarified, usually in the Angel player's favor, and the Sanguinor's miraculous savior rule got some clearing up. It can deep strike into engagement range of 2 or more units, so long as one made a charge move. You still can't do this in turn 1 of a matched play game though. So sorry, Sanguinor Simps. Okay, Adeptus Mechanicus. There are so many 5-point increases and decreases attached to units with maddening spelling and pronunciation that I'm not even gonna bother. It's a shotgun blast of tiny points adjustments, and it's really hard to determine if -5 points to Corpuscarii Electro Priests and +5 points to Taraxii Sterilizers, Lord, is really gonna move the needle. Auto divinatory targeting stacks the Protector imperative to set ballistic skill to 2 up, so that's something, I guess. 60 bird lists will probably go the way of the dodo after this, but almost everyone involved can agree that that's a good thing. Whew, we made it! You should be up to speed with the big changes in this latest balance update about now, but if you've got any more questions or concerns about how your army will do in the new update, sound off in the comments. Once you're done engaging in honorable keyboard combat, why not head over to our Patreon and toss us a few bucks. You'll get early access to videos, exclusive event pre-sales, and the occasional peek behind the scenes. You can also show some love to our sponsors, Baron of Dice, Monument Hobbies, and Grey Matter Gaming, who have been generous enough to sponsor our videos. I've been Campbell McLaughlin, reminding you that Games Workshop did not shoot your dog. Thanks for watching.